We are now officially just one day away from the release of Gridmaster, so today we're going to be doing a day one early guide. Obviously this is subject to change considering we don't know a majority of the tiles, but whether you plan on following it or just bouncing off some ideas, this video should give you a decent idea of how to effectively do some of the early tiles we do know, and honestly should ultimately make it a lot easier to add other tiles into the plan after the fact. But with those disclaimers out of the way, I guess the only other thing I would mention is this plan is based on my starting relic along with my choices in the gathering and craftsman skills. So depending on what skills you're going to be taking from those rewards, there might be a completely different strategy that's much better for you. Regardless, as soon as we jump in, we'll probably be forced straight into the Gridmaster tutorial. And the plan is just to do this video as kind of a walkthrough. I know a lot of people prefer that over just a quick short chop and cut. But once we've completed the Gridmaster tutorial, we'll unlock our very first tile reward, and with it we'll get to pick one of the 3 starting tools. As you can see from completing 2 other tasks being mining a gold ore and chopping maple logs, we will unlock all 3 of the total tools. So while your first choice is definitely still important for how you're going to unlock the other ones, it's not nearly as important as the past, where if you are picking one, you completely miss out on the other 2. Regardless, the starting tool I'm going to be taking is the Power Miner relic. Once we've done that, we are going to start pickpocketing the nearest man, and the plan is to continue doing so until I get 15 thieving. With the boosted XP rates and the time it's going to take me to run anywhere else, like going over to the farmer, I think it's going to be worth just staying here until I get 15. Another thing to note is a lot of people do believe we are going to be getting the Dodgy Deals relic, which is the continuously pickpocketing along with never being able to fail. If there is a tile on the grid for that needs to be completed, and depending on what it is, if it's going to be easy to do right out of the gate, that's definitely something I'm going to prioritize, because once I get 15 thieving, the next plan is going to be heading over to the ham members. Before that though, I am going to make my way out the eastern entrance of the castle. You can drop the starter runes in your inventory, the heirs and mines, and claim some from the magic tutor. And after we've done that, I'm going to head into the shop, buy myself a knife, sell some of the junk that's in my inventory. Things like the shield, the dagger, and the wooden sword for a little bit of extra GP. One other thing to note while we are running over to the ham hideout, this guide is based on the belief that we are going to be starting with a Drayman staff hand having access to fairy rings. Now our first potential change in the plan does already start right here out of the gate. If we do have access to dodgy deals and no failing pickpocketing, I'm going to be staying at the ham hideout from 15 all the way to 40 thieving. But if we do not have access to that relic, it would be absolutely painful even with boosted XP rates to stay in here the entire time. So the more efficient and less painful plan at that point is going to be doing Stallscape. So considering the area we're trying to get to anyway already has access to a cake and silk stall, this shouldn't be that big of a change if we do have to go off track. Otherwise, let's just assume we were able to get our 40 thieving here at the ham hideout. At this point, I need at least 450 GP, that from pickpocketing the men and the occasional coin pouches I'm going to be getting from the ham members. With that 450 GP, we are going to make our way over here to Django, and we are going to buy ourselves the Chronicle, along with 1 teleport. Now at this point you do have your starter runes, and you are more than welcome, depending on how it's set up, to go attempt to kill your lesser demon over here in the Wizard's Tower if you want to take on that route. It definitely does take a little bit of RNG with the amount of runes we start with. Otherwise, I'm going to teleport with the Chronicle, and I'm going to base this solely off how many people are in the areas, but I'm going to get myself at least 15 mining, either from this mine over here on the west, or this mine right here on the east. Considering from the looks of things, Power Miner does seem to be a very popular first choice. Make sure you don't run straight through the Dark Wizards by getting KO'd. But after getting our mining done, we're going to make our way up here to these guards just north of the bird, and we are going to get ourselves from 40 to 50 thieving. Once we've done that, we will travel with Renew and make our way down here into the castle. With 50 thieving, we'll have access to thieving the wealthy citizens. Just as one's coming in right now, we'll go ahead and pickpocket them, and we're going to continue doing this until we get a house key. Now one nice thing if we do have dodgy deals is you don't have to keep waiting for the wealthy citizens to get distracted by the little child. But now that we've got our house key, we can make our way over into one of these houses, and once we get some valuables from inside, we'll be able to complete that first task. And just like that, it didn't take very long at all. We would have completed the tile to collect valuables from a Varlemore house. I would recommend taking advantage of all of the extra GP you are going to be able to get from these valuables selling him. It will make the starting out time of your Golden God trading much quicker. Otherwise, trade in all the valuables you get, collect your cash, and with that completion, we'll gain one of the strongest early game relics, being the Golden God relic. We'll be able to high alch items without any level or rune requirement, along with a 65% chance to save the item every single time we alch it. But once we've unlocked Golden God, we want to make our way straight up here north, right inside of this little sword shop. I would recommend whatever you do buy, you can buy at least 2 of said item. That way you don't spend all of your money on one myth plate body, and then when you go to alch it, you don't actually save it. But the whole goal here is to work up to having a nice stack of addy plate bodies. Now this step of the plan is time dependent. I'm not going to spend a ton of time just standing here doing nothing else but alching. But the goal and hope is to get somewhere between 30 to 50 addy plate bodies stacked up. But the last thing I am going to do before I leave the city is run down here to the baker and buy a few food. But this part of the plan does come to another crossroads. Depending on whether we have access to the birds, that does require Twilight's Promise, something I can't imagine we have auto-completed. But if we do, this would be the fastest method to get over to the gem crab area. Otherwise, plan B is to run south to this fairy ring right here to AJP. And if we also don't have fairy rings and that plan backfires, I guess the old-fashioned way is we're just going to have to take a big old hike. Make sure you have your auto-alching set up on your stack of addy plate bodies. But from here, we are going to take the fairy ring to AIS, up to the Auburn Valley. And then from there, we just got to make our way a little southwest. And right down here, we are going to board the boat to Taclon. And I'll go ahead and pull up the map. If you're not too familiar with the newest addition to Varlemore, all you got to do is run a little south across this bridge and down to this boat. We're going to take it to Taclon. And from here, we're going to run north and try to find the nearest gem crab. Just like right now, if you run up and there's no crab in the area, all you got to do is crawl through this hole. And I guess in a perfect world, if you showed up and it only had 16% remaining, you would be all set. Now the task for this gem crab is only watching it burrow away, so you only have to be somewhere in its vicinity. We don't know exactly whether that means you have to be somewhere close or anywhere in its radius, but make sure if you are in the area that you do get close just as it's about to die, so that you don't have to spend another 10 minutes on this task. But one nice thing about most of the gem crab areas is there is a ton of rocks to mine. Considering we have at least 15 mining up to this point, there are quite a few iron rocks that you're going to be wanting to take advantage of. And the goal here is to get all the way up to 40 mining. That way we can complete the tile for mining a gold ore. And in the most ideal world, the crab was in the easternmost location, so you're already ready to go. But once we've watched the gem crab burrow away, we unlock the gatherer skill relic. With this, we'll be able to pick 3 support/gathering skills, and every single time we gain XP in one, we'll gain 50% of that in the other 2. And my 3 choices for the gathering skills are going to be Hunter, Slayer, and Woodcutting. I think this one's very heavily dependent on playstyle and what your plan is for how you're going to be playing Gridmaster. I have seen so many different combinations of skills for this specific pick. But my thought process and my plan is Woodcutting is my least favorite AFK out of the AFKable skills here. I absolutely just despise Hunter in all facets. Hopefully agility gets decent. Using the Greaves at all times everywhere I go. And then the plan is just to use Slayer as the training method for the other 2 skills. But once I've completed the task to mine a gold ore, I'm going to make my way a few steps down here to the south into Kastori. And very conveniently, Kastori has itself a fishing shop. Inside here, I'm going to buy like 100 bait and 1,000 feathers. A little overkill in terms of what fishing requirement we need, but I am just going to use the feathers for some early game fletching later on. Once we get the bait, I'm going to make my way over here to the boat and take it to Taclon. And once we're here, we're going to make our way just a few steps over here to the west. Because in order to unlock our next tool, we do have to be standing within a bank. So now that we've mined ourselves a gold ore, I'm going to be using it to unlock the Lumberjack relic. Now for a post-edit clip, because one thing I actually completely skipped over in the initial guide. Right after we unlock the Lumberjack relic here at that bank, before we head off on the boat, we want to make our way down here to the west. All you need is just another couple hundred cast of Wind Strike. Because as soon as we get done with the woodcutting and we make our way back up here to this fairy ring, you'll once again have another great opportunity to go take on the lesser demon, depending on how that entire situation is going to be looking at the time. But now with that said, let's go ahead and jump back to the live clip. Once we get our Lumberjack axe, we can move on to the next part, and all we're going to do is take this boat back over here to the Gloom Trail. And with our newfound axe, we are going to chop our way all the way back to the fairy ring, starting with these broken dead trees until you get 15 wood cutting, and we can take on this oak just a few steps up here to the north. Now, one thing to keep in mind, we are a very low combat level still at this point. There are some roaming wolves and giant bats, so make sure you avoid those. Don't get killed just AFKing a little harder than you should. Once you get 15, move your way over here to the oak trees. And once I hit 30, I'm going to take a few steps further north, and already we have some willow trees. I'm going to spend another few minutes chopping these trees until we get 45. And all we have to do is cross this bridge, and we can hack this maple tree right here to complete that task. But now with the completion of chopping a maple tree, we can actually unlock our third and final tool. And personally, I am going to take a detour and do an extra 25 seconds of running up here to this north bank. And I'm going to go ahead and unlock the harpoon before heading back to this fairy ring. Once I'm back at the fairy ring, I'm going to teleport to the Savannah. And we're going to make our way just over here to the east. And our new home is going to be this Stonemason shop. We should have a few 100k from alching all of the adamant plate bodies. You're going to want at least 300k to start off this method. Most likely, I'm probably going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 500k at the minimum. And the most likely starting item is going to be the gold leaves that we can buy for 130k. And these high alch for 60k before moving on to the magic stones. And these come in at a price of $975, and I believe they high alch for $450. Now we do get a slight bump on those prices because we get a 15% jump from the Golden God relic. But at this point of the plan, I am going to spend a good few minutes starting to stack up a decent cash stack. But as soon as I'm able to get a decent little noted stack of some items to alch, very conveniently over here to the east we have access to some fishing spots. And right here you can small net fish at level 1 fishing to start our training off. We already have the bait in our inventory as soon as we get 5, and we can start bait fishing for some sardines and then herrings. Ultimately, the only real goal is to get at least 20 fishing before leaving here. At that point, we can do fly fishing in Lumbridge later on to finish off 35 to take on Temporos. But I think the more likely outcome for me personally is I'm going to stick around here and probably do some harpoon fishing. Because once I get these first tiles done, the plan is to rush the 99 construction for the Kopesh. And in order to do that, I'm going to need a ton of cash, so I'm probably going to spend a decent little chunk of time here before I leave. But whenever you get your desired fishing level or cash stack size, we're going to go ahead and home teleport, make our way down here to count check, and we're going to use our one-time teleport to send us to the Stronghold of Security. Now this tile is pure speculation, so if it doesn't actually exist, I'm not going to take the time to run the Stronghold just for 10k. But the belief is that going all the way to the bottom floor of the Stronghold and collecting the fancy boots, and in return we will get the Sage's Greaves, which are the boots from previous leagues that every few ticks when you are sprinting you get free agility XP. From here we're going to make our way north, up into Edgeville. Try to grab ourselves a Slayer task here from Cristelia. If you didn't pick Slayer as one of your skills from the Gatherer, you might not be able to get a task considering you don't have any experience. The goal here is to get Moss Giants. If it is something completely terrible, I am just going to skip it later on. Otherwise, once we've done that, we are going to pull this lever. Make sure you still have the knife in your inventory from earlier. There shouldn't be any reason to bank it. Use your knife to slash through the web, and we're going to make our way into the Mage Bank. Inside Mage Bank, I'm going to grab myself like 1,000 cast of mine runes. I'm not going to buy any airs because I'm about to go buy myself an air staff. Probably going to buy around like 100 law runes. And the elemental runes you're going to want to have are some fire runes for the Moss Giant kills, and then some air runes for the Ogress kill. But now that we got some runes, we should have plenty high enough level to cast some teleport spells. I'm going to make my way over to Varrock. Quickly grab myself a Staff of Air. And then from here, I'm going to teleport to Catherby. Now this part of the guide could potentially change in the future, but the whole goal here is to make ourselves very quick access to a boat. And now that we got some runes, we're going to make our way over to Corsair Cove. Once here, we're going to make our way over to the dungeon on the west. And inside are some Ogress warriors and shamans. I imagine these are probably going to be very busy. At this point, you do have a decent magic level, so you are going to have a much faster kill time than some of the people who tried to get here quickly. Otherwise, do your best to pull a warrior into a safe spot. And with the kill of the warrior, we'll unlock the Combatant relic. The Combatant reward allows you to pick 3 different combat skills, and every single time you gain XP in one, you gain 50% of that XP in the other 2. My 3 choices I'm going to be taking for Combatant are Prayer, Strength, and Range. And the plan is to use the overpowerness of the Golden God with all the cash I'm going to have to use Prayer as a training method for the other 2, especially for getting them started out of the gate. But now that we've killed an Ogress and completed that tile, we are narrowing in on the completion of an entire first column. From here, I'm going to minigame teleport to Clan Wars. Once I've made it to Clan Wars, I'm going to make it out the east entrance. And I'm going to obelisk with the goal of making it to 44 Wildy. Once I'm at 44 Wildy, I'm going to make my way down to the Chaos Altar, avoiding the Chaos Fanatic. And we're going to use our cash stack on the Chaos Altar until we get 43 prayer. Don't worry about losing your money or items, because if you weren't familiar, any deaths in Gridmaster work just like they did in Leagues. You keep all of your stuff, even if you die to another player, it just ends up in a gravestone like a PVM death. Otherwise, once we get 43 prayer, we're going to make our way all the way over here to the east. Probably want to flick some magic prayer on your way through the dragons. But once you're here, you're going to take advantage of those fire runes you bought earlier, and we're going to mow down some moss giants until we pull a mossy key. Now the one downside is we do have a little trek to get back into a place where we can teleport, but the benefit of doing it in the Wildy as opposed to somewhere else, as long as it's not overly crowded, is the drop rates are much better. Once you've made it back to level 20, we're going to teleport our way down to Lumbridge. If you haven't finished your 35 fishing already, go ahead and take a pit stop here at the fly fishing in the river. If you finished earlier, make your way through the gate. And now we're going to make our way down here to the south all the way to the Tempe boat. Ferry along with Sathwood. And now you've arrived at Temporos. Any of the other stuff you need for this kill, you're going to be able to grab from the boat as soon as it starts. I imagine there probably is going to be a ton of people doing it en masse on launch, if you are actually doing this on day 1 of Gridmaster. Otherwise, you might have to hop to the most populated world if you don't want to do a solo encounter yourself. I imagine early on there isn't going to be much difficulty trying to find other people to do it with you to make a pretty fast kill. But with that completion of your first Temporos kill, you will finally unlock the Craftsmen. Just like the other Combatant and the Gatherer from earlier, this one instead we gained 3 Artisan skills, and this one does still have a little bit of a question mark for me. Ultimately, if we do end up getting the Banker's Note, this choice is going to look a little different, but if we don't end up getting Banker's Note, my current 3 choices for the Craftsman is going to be Construction, Herblore, and Runecrafting. The primary decision here being using Construction as the method to train the other 2 because it's so fast and a lot easier now that we have so much money from Golden God. Otherwise, with that task completion, the last thing to do is gear up with all of your stuff from the bank. Grab your runes, a full inventory of food, an axe, a knife, and your mossy key. And with protection prayers and about 50 magic, we should have no problem making our way over to Varrock. And unfortunately, we do have to take the long way around by going in the Varrock sewers this way, taking the entire path all the way around until you make it to Bryophyta's lair. The only shortcut to this is if you do have 51 agility already for the pipe squeeze. Well, with that, that is my current pathing and plan for a majority of all the early easy tiles we have right now. And I'm sure there's plenty of changes that are going to be made whenever all of those tiles do release just before launch. And once I've finished all of these tiles and I finally unlock the 8x multiplier, my plan for the next few hours after that is just going to be grinding out all of the construction straight to 99 to unlock that Kopesh. From there, I guess I'll have to see where the other tiles take me. But that's going to do it for this video. If you guys did enjoy or found it helpful, consider dropping a like. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great Gridmaster, and I'll catch you in the next one.